let's get started. Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for Ecolabs webinar series. My name is Tas, and I'm an innovation manager at Ecolabs Center of Innovation for Energy, or Ecolabs for short. I'll be hosting this session. Ecolabs is a national center of innovation for clean energy and sustainability, jointly established by Enterprise Singapore, Sustainable Energy Association of Singapore, and Nanyang Technological University. We create programs that help startups and SMEs to pilot, testbed, and commercialize their deep tech solutions. Corporations to adopt complex and novel technologies and reach their sustainability objectives. And investors to build strategies and make sensible investments in the clean energy sector. What makes us unique is our industry insights, access to the world's leading researchers in sustainability, clean energy experts, testbeds, and pilots. We are organizing the Ecolabs webinar series to enhance the engagement and interaction with our partners, where we invite industry and market experts to offer their insights. At the end of this session, we'll have 10 minutes for the Q&A and a quick pop-up poll where you can indicate your interest in connecting with speakers. Today's webinar titled Emerging Opportunities in India's Mobility and Energy Storage Sector. And it will be conducted by Invest India and India Energy Storage Alliance. The webinar will focus on an overview of Indian e-mobility sector, especially in the recently launched production-linked incentive scheme for advanced chemistry cells, along with the state-level incentive schemes with ongoing case studies. Our speakers will also share more on how India is on its own way becoming globally competitive destination for energy storage and value chain companies. And let me do a quick introduction of the speakers for today. First, Arishna is a senior investment specialist for auto and e-mobility at Invest India, Ministry of Commerce, Government of India. Prior to this role, Arishna worked with Deloitte Touche and Tomatsu for 7+ years as a consultant in M&A and statutory audit roles across industrial, automotive components, manufacturing, and engineering sectors. She was responsible for end-to-end execution of mid-market buy-side and sell-side due diligence transactions involving global conglomerates, private equity, and venture capital investors, government service companies, and promoted own Indian companies. Arishna is a chartered accountant from the Indian Institute of Chartered Accountants and has done her Bachelor of Commerce with honors at Delhi University. Our second speaker is Dev, has been working across business roles in the Indian automotive industry for close to a decade now. He has seen the industry both from corporate and consulting standpoint, and he has executed multiple M&A deals, both buy and sell side, across border with a JV partnership with Asian and European players. In the recent years, he has executed 2 joint ventures in the electric vehicle space and firmly believes in India gaining a leadership position when it comes to e-mobility. Dev is an MBA from Nanyang Business School in Singapore and UC Berkeley, USA. And our third speaker for today is Dr. Rahul, President and MD of Customized Energy Solutions India. He leads the emerging technology domains for customized energy solutions globally, which under his leadership has emerged as a thought leader in the areas of energy storage, renewables, demand response, electric vehicles, and smart grid technologies. A strong votary of improving energy storage and e-mobility in India, Rahul founded the India Energy Storage Alliance in 2012 and continues to serve as its president. He served as the board member for Energy Storage Association USA during 2009-2015 and as the chair for Global Energy Storage Alliance during 2018 to 2020. Dear speakers, thank you for joining us today, and I will give floor to you. You can start your presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. Just 2 minutes.
Is my screen visible, Arishna?
Yeah, Dev, we can go to the next slide. Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Stan, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be present here and be a part of this webinar. And I'd like to thank Ecolabs for making this possible. So before we begin, I would like to give a brief introduction about Invest India and about what we do. So Invest India is the Indian government's national investment promotion and facilitation agency. It comes under the aegis of Ministry of Commerce and Department of Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade. Our mandate over here is twofold. First is to promote India as an investment destination, apprising global companies and associations such as yourself of the various relevant policies, incentives, etc. The other part is facilitation of those investments. So once companies have decided to invest in the Indian market, we at Invest India support them in the investment cycle here. Hence, Invest India is like your relationship manager in India. Our role is to guide you throughout the investment cycle, pre, during, and post. It's to bring ease in doing business in India. Now, as you can see, in the pre-investment stage, we can help you with assessing the correct opportunity for you, for market strategy, guiding you through the relevant policies basis your investment requirements, and giving you subsidy and incentive advisory. During your investment over here, we'll help you to find the correct strategic partner. We'll help you to assess the correct location for your investment, guide you about the entry route procedures, and sort of help in fast tracking your regulatory clearances. Now, it just doesn't end once your investment is done. We sort of handhold you throughout the investment cycle. So once your investment is done, we'll be there to guide you through any policy changes, to redress any issues that you face, and for helping in further investment, further expansion. Next slide, please. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So I'd like to start with a brief overview of the Indian auto sector. Now, as we know that India is the 5th largest auto market and the largest producers of two-wheelers and tractors globally. In 2010, the automotive market was 5% of the GDP, whereas now it's close to 7.5% of the GDP. In this year alone, India produced, in FY20, India produced 26 million vehicles and exported 4 million vehicles. And this industry is expected to reach US $300 billion by 2026. Now, in the last 20 years, the auto sector has received 5% of the total FDI inflow into India, half of which has come in the last 5 years. Moving on, as is the case globally at the moment, the auto sector is naturally transitioning into the EV space, and our government and auto industry is aligned in achieving this goal. There are various growth factors, as you can see on the slide, that are driving the EV market over here in India, and I'm going to talk about a few of them. So the first is the growth of last mile delivery startups and companies like Amazon, Zomato, Swiggy, etc. Now they have a momentous contribution to the EV sector. Since EVs are more economical, more and more delivery partners are shifting to an electric fleet and have set up an ambitious target for the same. Overall, only if we speak of the startup ecosystem, more than traditional OEMs, innovations best happen at a startup level, and this is expected to be a strong growth driver in the ecosystem. India has more than 150 startups in the EV space, and these startups are continuously bringing new innovations and new technologies. Another really big factor over here is the rise of pollution in metropolitan cities. The consumer's mindset recently has been evolving, and more of them want to move to cleaner energy resources and live a better life in the coming years. There have been various other factors, and which include government initiatives, such as the benefit and taxes for customers, state and central incentive schemes, so on and so forth. Now, as we can see, the EV market in India is expected to grow multifold and reach USD 26 billion in the next 8 to 9 years. And the government is taking unprecedented steps to boost the EV ecosystem in India. Now, given that battery is one of the most important component of an EV, the first step for us is to build a good battery manufacturing base. We are expecting an increase in the requirement for energy storage to reach about 158 gigawatt hours by 2030. So keeping this in mind, the central government in India has come up with a production-linked incentive scheme for advanced chemistry cells. And that's what we will be talking about and showcasing in the next few slides. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this PLI scheme was announced in multiple sectors such as telecom, auto, textiles, autocoms, etc. The scheme for advanced chemistry cells was announced on 9 June of this year and has a budgeted outlay of 2.5 billion USD over a period of 5 years. Through this scheme, the government of India intends to optimally incentivize potential investors to set up giga-scale ACC manufacturing facilities with emphasis on maximum value addition and quality output. Now, the scheme involves setting up of cumulative ACC manufacturing capacity of 50 gigawatt hours for ACCs and an additional cumulative capacity for 5 gigawatt hours for niche ACC technology. In short, this scheme will be technology agnostic. The beneficiary firm will have to commit to set up a minimum of 5 gigawatt hours of ACC facility, and the total subsidy that will be disbursed by the government will be capped at 20 gigawatt per hour per beneficiary firm. Now, as we can see, there are two parts to the scheme. One is the eligibility for the incentives, and the second is subsidy disbursement. Incentives will be offered only to those firms that have been allocated the ACC production capacity. Now, for the eligibility criteria, it's a two-envelope system comprising of a technical bid and a financial bid. So the technical bid will, in that you'll have weightages allocated for technical criteria, including criteria such as value addition, energy density, and cycle life. Financial bid will refer to the amount of cash subsidy sought per kilowatt hour of ACC sold. The lower the subsidy, the better. There are also other criteria in this. Some important criteria I'll just mention. So the manufacturing facility would be commissioned within a period of 2 years, and the subsidy will be disbursed thereafter over a period of 5 years. The company also has to ensure achieving a domestic value addition of at least 25% and incur the mandatory investment of $31 million within 2 years. This value addition of 25% has to be raised to 60% within 5 years. This is for eligibility. Now we come to the second part, which is the subsidy disbursement. So the subsidy disbursement will be calculated in the following formula. It will be applicable subsidy amount per kilowatt hour multiplied by the value addition achieved, multiplied by the actual sale of advanced chemistry cells in kilowatt hours. Now, the details of this subsidy disbursement will be elaborated in detail when the final scheme document is released. Next slide, please. So now, in short, I have explained the scheme, the eligibility and the bidding process. So there is one last eligibility criteria that the resulting cell should fulfill to qualify for the PLI scheme. Now, the boxes that are marked in ACC is where the scheme is applicable. Now, for example, a company producing with batteries with a cycle life of say 4,000 and energy density of greater than or equal to 200 watt-hour per kg will be able to apply for the scheme. And this is where we are predicting that most companies will fall in the matrix. Further, there are other smaller set of details that includes like forming of a separate committee called ECOS or an empowered group of secretaries that is formed to monitor the scheme and monitor the subsidy disbursement. So this was all from my side, and I would like to invite Dev, who is the lead for auto and e-mobility at Invest India, to cover the rest of our presentation. Over to you, Dev.
Thanks, Arishna. Thanks for giving a good overview of the sector along with the central government initiatives which we are planning to incentivize the sector and to actually grow the sector. So just a few quick points which I want to emphasize again for the purpose of the audience. One, the policy which Arishna has been speaking about. It's extremely flexible. Government of India is not emphasizing on any one chemistry or technology vis-a-vis the other. So as long as your cells are able to give a certain energy density and a certain cycle life, which Arishna just showed on the previous slide in that matrix. If you are able to qualify within through that matrix, if your performance of cells is over and above the minimum threshold, then your cells will be incentivized, whatever chemistry or whatever technology you have. Secondly, the kind of incentives, 20% which Arishna spoke about, these are extremely lucrative. No manufacturing business in the world rather would give you these kind of 20% sort of cashbacks on revenue. So if you sell your cells worth $100, $20 up to $20 kind of cashback, you can be eligible to avail up to $20 kind of a cashback through this policy basis your performance of those cells. Thirdly, which another point which I want to highlight here is one of the additional growth factors which is coming into play is a recently notified, rather 3 days back itself, a recently notified auto sector production linked incentive scheme, which is not the scheme we are talking about. This is the production linked incentive scheme for cell manufacturing, but there is an additional scheme with incentives for $3.5 billion, which is there to incentivize electric vehicles and their components. So with this scheme coming parallelly with the PLI ACC scheme, the sector, the EV sector as a whole is bound to grow by leaps and bounds, and we are expecting investments worth $7 to $8 billion through this auto PLI scheme, which will be a big booster to the cell manufacturing space locally. And lastly, of course, both of these schemes will be implemented by the Government Ministry Department of Heavy Industries. And point to note here is that Arishna and myself from Invest India, we work extremely closely with Department of Heavy Industries, which is implementing these policies. So any one of you, if you have any queries or you want to raise any questions or if you have any plans for India and you have any support requirements from an Indian government perspective, we'll be happy to align you with Department of Heavy Industries. We have our daily engagement with them. Moving on to my slides, we'll start with the impact of the scheme on the overall ecosystem. So as we all know, cells are the major value contributor to the electric vehicles. Close to 30% of the value of a vehicle could be these electric vehicle battery cells. So with the kind of incentives we have to manufacture these cells in India, both from the central government as well as from the state government, the price of these cells, rather the cost of these cells is bound to go down, which in the medium term should lead to a lower price for electric vehicles, should lead to a lower price of electric vehicles for the end consumers. So as of now, the biggest barrier for adoption of electric vehicles is of course the acquisition price. So with these cells getting localized and coming to a lower price, vehicles would become cheaper, which will rather increase the demand of these electric vehicles, further leading to economies of scale. And this kind of a ripple effect can have a big multiplier effect on the overall sector, not only to the electric vehicle OEMs, but of course to the entire ecosystem of fleet operators, last mile delivery companies, infrastructure players who are doing battery swapping or charging, because as we say, it's a chicken and egg sort of a problem. But with more vehicles on the roads, with cells being locally made, the charging companies will not have a problem thereafter. And of course, with all of the ecosystem getting mature, banking institutions and non-banking financial institutions will be more comfortable lending to the sector as a whole, which India is facing a challenge right now to a certain extent, the financing side of things. So we believe not, of course, all of this can't happen overnight, but in the medium term, overall sector is definitely bound to grow by leaps and bounds, and this scheme will be a trigger for that. Moving on, please let me know if my next slide is visible.
Yeah.
Perfect. So over here, we'll talk about the kind of work we as Invest India have been doing to promote this PLI ACC scheme. So we are working in 4 directions. One, of course, is working with cell technology companies who have the relevant technology to manufacture these cells at scale. So while we speak, we are working with cell manufacturers from different parts of the world, which include European players from across Asia, North American companies, and Russia. And most of these companies are extremely interested to look into the India growth story. And we'll of course talk about one of the case studies also in the later part of our slides, whom we have recently facilitated from an incentive standpoint. Point to note here is that some of the companies who are entering the Indian market are not only coming alone, but they are coming with their ecosystem partners, which include some of the supply chain companies as well. So they're coming with the complete ecosystem, and more importantly, most of these chemistries which are coming to India are very unique chemistries, and in certain cases are free of cobalt, free of nickel, and very different sort of chemistries, which are definitely very green and very eco-friendly. We can talk about it at length if required on an offline basis. Secondly, we are working with supply chain companies which are the kind of components which basically go within these cell manufacturing, the kind of components which go within these cells, such as cathode companies, anode manufacturing companies, separators, electrolytes, and so on and so forth. So one of the requirements within the PLI scheme is to have a minimum 60% local value addition to avail incentives from the cell manufacturing in India. Of course, 60% need not be done on day one. It can be 25% at the beginning and go up to 60% in the next 5 years. But we have started to move in that direction, and we are specifically working with cathode manufacturers and anode manufacturers from a supply chain perspective. And the reason to work aggressively with these two subcomponents is that India does have a very mature ecosystem, or at least to a certain extent mature ecosystem from an anode manufacturing perspective, because we are rich in carbon and graphite, and there are a few players who are already doing anode manufacturing for batteries in India. So this is a sort of a ecosystem already present in India, which foreign companies can leverage on. And secondly, from a cathode perspective, since this is the main heart of the battery cells, this is where the technology resides. This is one of the most valuable subcomponents within these cells. So cathode is something which we definitely can't miss. And more importantly, these are very, very chemically active substances. So they don't travel well, cathodes. So it's important to co-locate these cathode companies with these cell manufacturers. And from a business sense perspective, in India, there are a few battery recycling companies, some large groups who have entered the battery recycling business, who are basically taking batteries from different applications, recycling them. So a raw material of nickel sulfate, cobalt sulfate, and so on and so forth, it might not be a problem in the medium term, and this raw material can basically go for cathode manufacturers. So there's big companies in India who are recycling batteries, do have this end product of cobalt sulfate, nickel sulfate, which can be used as a good raw material for the cathode manufacturers. So this is one benefit to these cathode companies coming into India, in addition to the 50 gigawatt hours of demand and supply, which we spoke about in the earlier slides. And then, of course, from a chemical processing perspective, also India does have a very, very mature chemical ecosystem. Most of the states in India do have chemical companies operating, which might not be doing processing to battery grades, but they definitely do have capabilities of doing this. So cathode is definitely one area we are exploring, and we are actively talking with a few very, very large cathode manufacturers globally. Thirdly, we are working with some global funds. Since this cell manufacturing space is extremely capex intensive, a lot of these cell manufacturers are not comfortable putting in the entire chunk of capital to invest into the Indian market. So we are engaging with some funds specifically in Middle East who are looking to explore the opportunity of investing into Indian consortiums, which will do cell manufacturing in India. So this definitely we are targeting, and we are engaging with a few such funds. And lastly, we are working with Indian companies as well, because a lot of these foreign tech companies are looking for Indian JV partners who do have the operational capabilities of running large manufacturing plants in India, who do have the capabilities of doing basically business in India, dealing with the governments, dealing with end consumers, and dealing with manufacturing plants is not easy. So we are working with energy companies, auto component companies, oil and gas sector companies, and chemical companies. These are the Indian companies who are looking to diversify in cell manufacturing. And across these four sectors, we are working with an entire spectrum of public sector companies, large private sector companies, industrial conglomerates, and unicorn startups within the mobility space who are looking to enter this cell manufacturing space. Moving on to state incentives, I would not go deeper into this slide, but idea here is that PLI ACC scheme, which we have been speaking about in this presentation, is only one part of the benefits. So when we say up to 20% of cell price can be incentivized via the center, that's only the incentive from central government. Over and above that, state governments are offering additional incentives, which again are very, very lucrative for investors such as yourself. And in India right now, more than 16 states have already come up with their dedicated EV policies, and additional 8 states have policies in the draft stage, which are in the pipeline. So the kind of incentives these states are offering include things like capital subsidies, which is basically a percentage of your capital investments, which can range from 10 to 25% depending upon the state which you choose. Then things like stamp duty exemption, demand incentives to promote adoption into e-mobility, charging infrastructure subsidies, GST subsidies, additionally land subsidies, state level PLI schemes, which will be 1% or 2% of revenues, which the state will give you over and above the central PLI scheme. So there are multiple such things which are the incentives being offered by the states. And we will talk about one specific case study here. But point to note is Government of India does have a sense of urgency to promote this sector as a whole, and we are offering excellent incentives which are best in the world right now. Moving on to one of the case studies which we as Invest India recently facilitated. So it's a American company which is setting up gigafactories in the US, Australia, and in India. So I would not take the name here, but this company is planning to set up its 5 gigawatt hour plant in India, leveraging the PLI ACC scheme which we spoke about. And they are planning to they have committed an investment of $450 million plus. This is the investment by the complete consortium, not by this individual company. This consortium would, of course, include a third-party investor, will include an Indian JV partner, and so on and so forth. But the consortium would make an investment of $450 million in this Indian project for cell manufacturing. They've already done their MOU with a southern state, which we as Invest India facilitated their entire incentive negotiation. And to give you some sense of numbers, Government of India, from a state perspective, the southern state of India has already offered them incentives worth close to $130 million on their investment of $450 million. So the point to note here is up to 30% of incentives, 30% of capex capital incentives are being offered by the state, which is over and above the 20% of revenue subsidy being offered by the center. And so this is extremely good time to enter the Indian market to do cell manufacturing in India. The kind of support which we gave to this particular American company is across the spectrum of policy, location assessment, incentive negotiation. We helped them set up their strategic partnership, supply chain, and so on and so forth. We have supported them on their R&D partnerships in India, on their joint venture partners in India, on connecting them with the third-party investors to invest into this sort of a consortium, and of course, help them negotiate their incentives with the relevant state, which we spoke about. So point to note here is that in case any one of you is looking to explore the Indian market, Arishna and myself would be happy to engage with you offline on a one-on-one basis, and we'll be happy to replicate the kind of support we did for this American company with yourself. And all of this is, of course, on a pro bono basis because we are representing Government of India. There is absolutely no commercial interest here. I'll take a pause here. Thank you. And of course, happy to answer any questions which you may have at this stage. Otherwise, I'll pass on the baton to Dr. Rahul, who represents one of the biggest energy associations of India, and he'll run you through his presentation. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dave. So let me share my screen. So first of all, I'd like to thank Ecolab as well as Invest India for organizing this very important webinar, and also for all the participants for joining in. Already Dev and team have set the background quite well. So I'll straight away jump into sort of what are the additional collaboration opportunities which are there, and specifically talked about some of the initiatives what India Energy Storage Alliance has been doing. So for people who may not be familiar with IESA, IESA was started in 2012 to create awareness about advanced energy storage and e-mobility technologies in India. And in 2016, we upgraded our vision to make India a global hub for R&D, manufacturing, and adoption of advanced energy storage and EV technologies. And over the years, IESA has grown from just 5 members in 2012 to now more than 150 members and more than 30 global partners with whom we are working very actively throughout the year. So IESA has been very active on the policy front. So since 2013, we have been instrumental in almost every major policy initiative which has happened either at state level or at central government across various ministries. And we have been on a sustained fashion doing policy advocacy, creating awareness, making sure that we leapfrog rather than just look at incremental changes in this policy. We are very happy that since 2018, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji himself has been paying very key attention to this advanced energy storage manufacturing. And initially, he directed MNRE to take a lead in creating the National Energy Storage Mission, where I was one of the principal authors of the draft mission. And also simultaneously, Niti Aayog worked on the transformative e-mobility mission, which both later on in 2019 got merged together. And under that, the ACC, PLI, PLI program, which they've explained has come up through. There are also other initiatives being taken in terms of the 450 gigawatt renewable push, the National Hydrogen Mission. All of these, to some extent, are tied to each other. And we think that together, all these missions will enable India to achieve some of the climate goals what we have set for ourselves. These are just some of the photographs of various meetings over the years in terms of different ministries and different stakeholders which have taken place to advance the policy dialogue. As I mentioned, in 2016, we submitted our first set of recommendations to Indian government, mainly Niti Aayog, on the recommendations for encouraging advanced energy storage manufacturing in India. In 2017, we also started a partnership with AIMA, Indian Electrical and Electronic Manufacturing Association, for creating awareness in the industrial sector about some of the manufacturing opportunities, going down to the component level manufacturing and creating an enabling ecosystem for energy storage manufacturing. We have done 4 masterclasses in last 4 years for creating this awareness, and more than 150 corporates and CXOs have attended these training sessions. Also in 2018, we launched an initiative for reuse and recycling of advanced batteries because we didn't want to wait it too long. We have been working with MOEF, Ministry of Environment and Forest, for revising some of the existing documents. Overall, we project that between 2020 to 27, the base case market for stationary and e-mobility together is almost around 400 gigawatt hour. And in a base case scenario, this market could be almost close to 700 gigawatt hour. And right now, with some of the policy announcements which have happened, as well as the market uptake which we have seen, particularly in areas like two-wheelers, it indicates that most likely we are going to be closer to the best case scenario than the base case scenario. Now, apart from the government initiatives, there are a lot of other factors which are driving this technology push. One is the global scale-up in manufacturing. As most of you are aware, since 2010 to 2020, the global manufacturing went from almost 10 gigawatt hour for lithium-ion batteries to more than 500 gigawatt hour over last decade. And that corresponded to reduction from almost $1,000 per kilowatt hour down to $100 per kilowatt hour at a cell level. And now we are looking at, in the coming decade, this capacity to be increased from 500 gigawatt hour to more than 3,000 gigawatt hour by 2030. In fact, some optimistic projections suggest that we may reach that capacity by 2025-26 itself. And that would lead to now prices for cell level coming down by 2025 or 2027 down to $60 to $70 per kilowatt hour, and the pack level prices are expected to go down to $100 per kilowatt hour. And every time this happens, there are a lot more applications and areas which become economically viable, and market keeps on expanding exponentially. The other factor which many times people ignore is that it is not only about the cost reduction, but over last decade, we have seen tremendous improvement in many parameters, including energy density, cycle life, which has happened. And that's where we are very excited that the way the Niti Aayog program was drafted, and I was one of the core members of drafting the program, there is a very clear understanding about how these technologies are evolving, and there is a push for making India a hub for these advanced energy storage technologies. So again, many of these details are mentioned, so I won't repeat that. But just in terms of the timeline, in May, the cabinet approval was announced. In June, the notification has come up, and we were actually expecting by now the RFP should have been released. Unfortunately, there have been some unexplained delays, and we do anticipate sometime in next 3 months, the RFP will get released. Although right now it is hard to commit any clear date. Both Niti Aayog and DHI have not provided any clarity on that, but we will work with Invest India and others to try to get that clarity and keep all of you up to date. So depending on when the actual RFP get released, we think that there will be time between January to March for closing of the tender. And at the same time, the additional 5 gigawatt hour niche SEZ program, which was again added to this program based on the recommendation from IESA, will open up where even some of the next generation technologies like solid state batteries, silicon anode batteries, or sodium sulfur or other technologies, they can set up even smaller manufacturing plants, which could be only 500 megawatt hour or even smaller. So this is not only about getting 4 or 5 large companies to set up 5 to 20 gigawatt hour manufacturing plant. But the way the program is designed, we expect there will be additional up to 10 investments which may happen for some of these next generation manufacturing technologies as well. And depending on when this exact timeline takes place, between March to June, we should get clarity of which are the companies which have won the initial tender. And since then, their companies will have 2 years for setting up the manufacturing plants and then maybe another 6 months for stabilizing the processes. So we do expect sometime between June to December 2024 will be the start of the actual gigafactory operations in India. Now, this is very important that we need to look at it in a global scape. So again, 50 gigawatt hours seems very ambitious for India, and people are trying to actually buy in as much time as they get for this. But this is actually leaving India much behind in the global landscape, because while we are waiting in like now 2027 or 28 to get to 50 gigawatt hour manufacturing, Europe will have more than 600 gigawatt hour manufacturing much before that. China already has more than 500 gigawatt hour manufacturing right now, and that is expected to get to more than 1000 gigawatt hour by 2025. Similarly, US is looking at getting more than 300 gigawatt hour of cell manufacturing by 2025. So the 50 gigawatt hour is the minimum, and the sooner we achieve it, the more relevant we will remain in the global world. Otherwise, we'll have to keep on looking for next generation technologies. Now, IESA has already set vision where we don't want to look at the 50 gigawatt hour ACC as an end goal. We think this is just a first step what we need to take, and that's where we are trying to build on this. And earlier last week at the World Energy Storage Day, we released this vision document where we are setting a goal that we should, whatever say 50 gigawatt hour target for 2027, we expect that by 2025 we'll have at least 20 gigawatt hour operational by that. By 2030, we would like to double from the 50 gigawatt hour target to 100 gigawatt hour. And by 2035, we would like to take this manufacturing to the 500 gigawatt hour as a minimum capacity. Again, right now it may seem very ambitious, but we think this is like a bare minimum goal which we need to set as an industry, and the market will be much bigger than that. So we are not even right now looking at India as an export hub, although the program does allow companies who manufacture in India to export and still get incentive, but this is something which is minimum, which is required. We are also starting to set up looking at other parameters like the green manufacturing. So we are setting a target that, although right now government has not set any particular target, but we ourselves on behalf of industry are trying to set up a target that by 2025, at least 30% of the energy used for manufacturing these cells in India should come from green energy. And by 2035, it should be 100% from green energy. And we'll work with industry to try to see if we can even fast track that and achieve that by 2030 itself. In terms of the demand breakup, we expect that the demand for 2025 will be around 55 gigawatt hour as annual demand, and it will go up to 650 gigawatt hour by 2035. And you can see that the some of the segments which will drive the demand may change over the years. And we specifically feel that EV demand is going to start sort of overshadowing some of the other markets, although between now and 2025, the market for stationary is going to be quite important. And it's not that that market is shrinking. That market will again double between 2025 to 2035 or even more. But still, again, the exponential growth, what is expected with the EV segment, that will overshadow the stationary market. Now, we see there are a lot of opportunities for global cooperation in terms of the technology imports, in terms of some of the raw material processing capabilities. But as they mentioned, in India also, many states are starting to look into it. So WRI, World Resources Institute, CES and IESA released last week a report on state of research and development in electric vehicle and battery technology. If you are interested, you can send me a separate mail. The entire report will be made available shortly next week for download from both WRI and IESA websites. In this report, we have tried to address many of the concerns what people have related to the raw material availability in India, the supply chain capability, because this is one of the debates right now going is that can India really aim for 60% domestic value addition? And we are pretty confident with the likes of almost 30 plus companies who are looking at investing into the supply chain that India can definitely in next 5 years achieve the 60% domestic value addition. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we need to shut down to global trade. In terms of the raw materials, particularly, I think there are a lot of global opportunities which are available, and we need to tap into it and not end up reinventing the wheel. We are also working on doing some of the training, and this is the area I would love to collaborate with NTU. So we have partnered with many institutions through ISA Academy. There is a new virtual training platform which was again launched on 22nd September on occasion of World Energy Storage Day, and we are looking for hosting partner content as well as developing joint training programs for skill development. Because right now, if we see all the manufacturing targets, what they or me, we have talked about, this requires a huge skill development. And again, Singapore and Ecolabs could be a very good partner for that area. IESA is also supporting startups. Already there are more than 25 startups who are part of the IESA ecosystem. And again, we are working very closely with various ministries, including METI, MNRE, Startup India, Agni, Invest India, as well as private agencies, including Visit AI, Thai India Angels, and others for supporting these startups. The two programs I'd like to highlight here is that one is we have with UNIDO. UNIDO has come up with a $500,000 annual fund for supporting beta deployments of energy storage and e-mobility technologies, where the first round of selection for 7 companies is already over, and there will be 2 more rounds of funding available. So up to 20 additional companies can get $50,000 each. So if you are interested, please keep an eye for the UNIDO announcement and subscribe to the IESA newsletter so that you are aware of the next round of funding. Similarly, we are partnered with iCreate, which is a Gujarat government entity, where they also have a 7-month-long idea to product innovation competition called Evangelize. The idea level submissions have already ended, and in fact, this week they are selecting the winners of around 12 companies who will get some initial funds for developing those ideas. The design level competition is still open. There is an opportunity to submit applications till 15th of October. So please do visit the iCreate website and submit your ideas if you are looking for partnership with this. We also did a global startup showcase as part of a World Energy Storage Day, where we received more than 75 applications from 15 plus countries, and out of which 17 companies got a chance to present to almost 100 global investors. And these were the companies which came from 7 countries. So again, we would love to partner with Ecolab to try to increase participation from Singapore-based startups in such initiatives in future. We also have an active industry academic partnership where apart from Indian universities, we have global universities such as CMU, Stanford are part of this, and we would love to strengthen this with Singapore. Please mark your calendar for 22nd September 2022. We started with this global World Energy Storage Day has been celebrated for last 5 years since 2017. Last year was the first global conference where we had 75 international speakers spearheaded by Professor Stanley Whittingham. This year, in fact, the scope increased and we had almost 175 speakers from 35 different countries who presented during a 24-hour marathon event. If you want to know more information, you can visit IESA website, or you can visit the etn.news, which is a news portal called Emerging Technology News. And you can even download some of the print issues and go through that. The latest issue recognizes 50 global thought leaders who are contributing for advancing energy storage and e-mobility around the globe. There is also a podcast available as well as various white papers and reports available for purchase from the IESA website. So with that, I'd like to hand it over back to the organizers, and I'll be happy to take any questions if there are.
Thanks a lot for such a comprehensive presentation. I know that it might be not very easy to explain it so nicely in such a broad topic in such a short period of time. So really appreciate your time and effort. So I'll remind all participants that now we're proceeding to the Q&A part, where you can ask questions through the Q&A box or in the chat, or just raise your hand and we will unmute you. At the same time, at the end of the session, we'll also launch a pop-up poll where you can indicate your interest to connect to the speakers and have a more in-depth discussion at the end of this webinar. So now going to the Q&A part, I've seen the first question from Arvind, who is asking about the minimum scale for the plant setup, because I believe that Dev was showing a case example, which is apparently a very big company, very interesting one. And I know that there are a number of startups and SMEs who are attending this webinar. So I believe this answer might also cover some other questions that they have.
Sure, Stas. So I'll be happy to take this one up. So in terms of scale, there are within the ACC scheme, there are two sections. One is for the lithium-ion mature technologies, which is the one we have majorly spoken about, 50 gigawatt-hour plan, 50 gigawatt-hours plan. So in this main scheme, the minimum scale has to be 5 gigawatt-hours and can go up to 20 gigawatt-hours. But more importantly, the section which Rahul covered at length, which might be more relevant to the SMEs who are in the audience for this particular webinar, is the niche technology segment of this ACC scheme. So within this niche technology scheme, if you think your technology, energy storage technology, is futuristic and is not yet ready for a giga scale, then we have additional scheme, details of which will be coming out in the next few weeks, or rather it might take a couple of months also. That will be step 2. So step 1 for India is the 50 gigawatt hour main ACC scheme, and step 2 is the niche scheme, which is in the pipeline. For that, even if you set up a facility of, let's say, 500 megawatt hours, this scale will also work to avail incentives for the ACC niche technology scheme, which could be the likes of solid state, aluminum air, then could other sort of technologies which are not the main lithium-ion technologies which are developed already on the scale. So these are the new upcoming technologies.
Yeah, so just to add to that, so right now under the original approval, it was decided that minimum scale for that would be 500 megawatt hour. But at the same time, we are right now have been doing some industry stakeholder consultation and talking to NITI Aayog and DHI, where that threshold may change. So again, if you are interested in participating in this program and you have certain niche technology, then please do approach IESA team. And we have basically each month we have 3 working group meetings. First Tuesday we meet for policy working group. Second Tuesday we meet for technology working group, and third Tuesday we meet for business working group, where we are gathering some of these inputs and then sharing it with DHI and NITI Aayog for final implementation. But as again they mentioned, there are range of technologies. Generally the definition of niche is also little bit loose right now, but it is very clear that basically these technologies have to meet at least one of the parameters, like in terms of say energy density going beyond say 300 or 350 watt hour per kg, or in terms of the cycle life going beyond 10,000 cycles, or it could be some other parameter which could be like safety or fire or those parameters, but those will need to be defined very clearly to ensure that these additional 5 gigawatt hour manufacturing does not go just to commodity technologies where someone is just trying to manufacture at a small scale, because this 5 gigawatt hour is not just some random number which is selected by the government. There has been a lot of industry stakeholder consultation which has happened looking at the economies of scale, because government is ready to support only for like 3 to 5 years in terms of this cash incentives what they will be providing. Beyond that, they want these industries to be self-sufficient and be able to compete globally. As they mentioned, a lot of risk have been taken out, but ultimately the responsibility of scaling up is for the applicants themselves.
Thank you, Dr. Rahul, and thank you, Dev, for answering this question so comprehensively. We have the next question coming in the Q&A box. So Ajar is asking, I believe energy storage will be used for the green energy storage sector, but currently the battery price is around double against solar panel. And what kind of price reduction as technology advances we will be seeing in the coming years? So what's your take on it?
Rahul, I think you will be the best one to take this up.
Yeah. No, so again, this is a very important question and people keep on asking that. See, again, when you are comparing a battery and a solar price, it is a, different aspect, right? So one thing is that with solar energy, yes, the prices are coming down. We have started to see like almost like a 1 rupee per kilowatt hour kind of a prices. But at the same time, whenever something is too much abundant, its value also starts going down. So right now, in fact, around the globe, solar technically is not an issue. Technically, you can generate solar in many places. You can put it in lots of deserts and something, and you can generate enough energy required for the entire world. At the same time, you will have to overbuild the transmission capacity by more than 5x, 6x. And plus, unless you store that energy, not entire world is going to start going back to the ancient time and start operating just from 8 a.m. or 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., right? So you need energy available for round the clock. And the only way to do it is achieve it through either continue using the fossil fuel based generation for rest of the time, the way right now we are doing it, where almost like more than everywhere in the world, more than 80% of the actual energy being generated is from fossil fuel. But if you want to really cut down on that and use more renewable energy, then the one option is do a hybrid between different type of renewable energy like hydro, solar and wind. And then wherever you need to use any excess energy which is available, you can use it in storage and you can shift it at different time. And if you see the levelized cost of storage in most of the regions now, for adding 4 to 6 hours of storage, it is already cost effective. So as compared to generating energy from any other centralized generation and then spending money for transmission distribution, if you can do it in a distributed fashion with solar plus storage, it is already cost effective as compared to the alternate technologies. And that's where we are seeing gigawatt hour scale projects being commercially deployed. But for 24/7, yes, there is still a lot more innovation required. For example, US Department of Energy has launched the Earthshot mission, where they have set target of reducing the levelized cost of long duration energy storage by almost 90% over next 10 years. So there right now, like for many long duration storage technologies, the upfront cost in terms of the capex may be somewhere between $300 to $500 per kilowatt hour. So already they have started funding certain technologies which can get down price points down to $10 per kilowatt hour. Now, if those are successful, we may not know for another 5 years or more. But the way I see it is there is no point in just waiting for some of those imaginary thresholds and price points. If you are right now using an application where you are using energy, and if you can use renewable plus storage and actually save money, why do you worry about what is going to happen 10 years down the line? You don't wait for some perfect cell phone for 10 years or perfect laptop for 10 years, right? If you can get more productivity from the current available technology, you can afford it. And most importantly, if you can get productive use from it, then I think it is perfectly fine. One of my friends used to say that price is only an issue in the absence of value. And here we believe that in case of, again, when it comes to solar, adding storage increases the value tremendously by adding the flexibility, by making it dispatchable, and the value is much more than the cost. So we should be seeing a lot more such projects being developed around the globe.
Thank you for a comprehensive answer. And I see that we are running out of time, so probably I'll give the last minutes to the speakers to sum up or to highlight maybe some points that they deem important from these sessions for participants to take away. And after this, we'll launch the pop-up poll to collect the interest from attendees in connecting with the speakers today. So Arishna, maybe we can start with you.
Thanks. So yeah, I think this webinar was quite informative for us as well. Thank you, Dr. Rahul, for your presentation. That was a great presentation, and it was very detailed as well. I would just like to invite everybody to let us know if you are interested in or have any investment plans in India. We would be happy to arrange for one-on-one calls with either us, our auto and e-mobility team at Invest India, or with Dr. Rahul at ISA. So please feel free to reach out to us, and I'll just pass it on to Dave for any other remarks that he might have. Dave, you're on. Yeah.
Sorry, my bad. So thanks, Arishna. Of course, I mean, any one of you, if you want a one-on-one consultation or any support on your entry into the Indian market, we as Invest India would be happy to do it on a pro bono basis. Definitely yes. But over and above this, in terms of the India's market, we won't talk about the policy right now. But since Invest India is facilitating a lot of investments, I'll want to throw some light on the numbers which we are facilitating right now. So we as Auto and EV team of Invest India right now are working on investments over $4 billion in the Indian market. And most of these are spread across the EV spectrum, which includes battery related investments, charging infra investments, powertrain, vehicle manufacturing. So it's going to be a golden year for India. And we believe the inflection point is right here. Be it in terms of policies, we are having the relevant policy framework, investments, we are facilitating $4 billion. Demand in this calendar year itself, in the first 7 months, we surpassed the demand of last complete calendar year. So demand is growing super fast. And in terms of new product launches, again, we are having several startups and several big industrial conglomerates, auto conglomerates who are launching their new products, which are coming in the Indian market. So we are growing from different side of spectrums. So would request you to explore the Indian market, and we'll be happy to support you in whatever way we can. Thanks.
Thanks, Arishna and Dev, and thanks, Tas, for hosting. And again, as I mentioned already, I see a lot of good collaboration opportunities between India and Singapore-based companies. Already, there are some of the companies like VFlow Tech. We are helping quite a lot. They are actually, in fact, I didn't mention, but they are one of the winners for the first round of the UNIDO funding, and we have been working with helping them in their India market entry. And also as a Customized Energy Solutions, which is a company behind India Energy Storage Alliance, we have also helped more than 50 companies around the globe in doing fundraising as well as finding strategic partners. And these clients between those in last decade have raised more than $2 billion. So again, if there is any commercial level help you need beyond what Invest India team is providing, I will be happy to support it through IESA or directly through Customized Energy Solutions. And not just for India, again, as a CES, we have a global presence with head office in US, with operations in Canada, Mexico, Japan, and Vietnam, apart from India. So looking forward to this active collaboration. And Stas, as I mentioned, would love to figure out to get into more active engagement with Ecolabs as a IESA, so that we can do it not just as a one-off webinar, but on an ongoing basis activity.
Sure, happy to hear that. And thank you for the speakers for sharing with us insights today. We'll launch a pop-up poll right now to collect the interest from participants in connecting with the speakers. A few more participants. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Today, we'll facilitate all the connections after the webinar, and we hope that you enjoyed the session, and there will be many fruitful collaboration at the end of it. So meanwhile, stay safe and healthy, and see you around. Bye-bye.